I love, love, love the 3 office model. I find that practice owners who have a 3 office model all within 20 to 30-minute drive of each other is a very healthy footprint, has a very high valuation, and it's enough that you're exchanging an abundance with yourself and your team and your community and your patient care experience, but you're also living a life of abundance in terms of your compensation as well. And you haven't tanked your time. You have time to go to horseback riding with your kids and coach soccer and stuff like that. You do have that work-life balance as an owner, and you deserve that as an owner. Too many owners are martyrs, and they're like, I haven't paid myself in 3 months. And I'm like, well, that's a problem. That's not a
Yeah.
badge of honor.
You didn't start your practice to barely hang on. I'll guess you started it for freedom, impact, and profit. This is Therapy for Your Money. I'm your host, Julie Harris. I'm an accountant, author of Profit First for Therapists, and CEO of Green Oak Accounting. Over the years, my team and I have partnered with hundreds of private practice owners, whether they're just getting started, scaling into thriving groups, or even preparing to sell. We've seen it all, and we know exactly what makes a practice tick financially. On Therapy for Your Money, I'll help you build a business that truly works for you. You'll get quick, actionable tips and episodes so that you can grow a profitable practice, increase your financial confidence, and pay yourself unapologetically. Because your work is way too important for you to burn out or go broke doing it. Love the podcast? Make sure to follow and give us a 5-star review. Here is Therapy for Your Money. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Therapy for Your Money. Today, I am joined by Brian Gallagher, who is a PT, founder of Meg Business, and also on the has the podcast Secrets of the Top 10%, which is a great podcast that I know is, very loved in the industry. So, without further ado, Brian, welcome.
Thank you, Julie, and thank you for those kind words. I try to do my best to be, I consider myself each and every day trying to have a positive influence on somebody somewhere in some way so that they can live a better life at what they're striving for. I know a lot of people have helped me over the years. It definitely is a group game, this game of life and this game of business for sure. So thank you for having me. I
Yeah,
do appreciate it.
happy to. I have to admit, I often listen to podcasts on 1.25 speed, and yours is one like you go so fast and you have so much information. I cannot do that for yours. So,
I've been told that before.
yeah. Yeah, this is not the first time you hear that, right?
Definitely not.
So today we were talking about financial leadership that's required to scale, right? Like how things shift over time so that you can go from kind of a business operator into more of that CEO role. So, what are some of the traits that you see work really well?
Well, I'll start with what I know doesn't work really well is when people approach business finances and their viewpoint on it, just like they run their household finances. And that's just such a different thing. Those are apples and oranges, you know? You don't want to spend more than you make. You want to be cash on the barrel. You want to run within a thing. That's how you run your household. But sometimes in business, you have to use other people's money to advance the business's purpose, right? And I think we're going to dig into this in this episode because I often have a little pet peeve with my accounting world professionals because they'll often show me, hey, your P&L is showing you've got this net profit. And I'm like, really? Where is that $79,000? It's not in my drawer. Is it in your car? Like, where is that? Because I'm often trying to coach people who go into business that your business is all about cash flow. Net cash flow per month is king. So I try to get people to focus on that. But unfortunately, they come to it from the household perspective of being very emotional about money, very emotionally connected to money. And so I'm usually starting there.
Got it. But all of the decisions that you're making really in that early stage, but certainly later on, they all have a financial component. So how do you coach people to start thinking like a CEO more than just thinking like a clinician?
Right. So when one's an employee, they're often thinking about getting a raise or getting a bonus or making more money incrementally for the time that they're contributing. Where I start is I start saying, okay, we're going to erase that mindset and that history of experience from you because what business is about is exchanging products for abundance, exchanging products for revenue. And so it's the higher quality that drives a higher quantity that drives a greater profitability. So quickly the person realizes that, oh, the minute I go into being in business, I'm in the business of building my business. And I'm like, yes, now we got to identify what those primary products are, what the sub products are. And there has to be a numerical value to your point. You have to be managing by statistics. Everything has to drop in line with being measurable. You can't just do things for the sake of doing them.
I find that often that financial component is not considered really. It's like, well, I know I need to do this, right? You got to spend money to make money, which theoretically is true, but like there still usually is a finite amount of cash
Right.
available, whether that's a loan or whatever that looks like. So, how do you think people should look at some of those early on decisions or growth decisions, right? Like opening a new clinic or whatever that may look like.
I like to start with a pro forma. I
Mhm.
like to sit the person down and say, "So where do you live and what are you thinking?" And I say, "What's your ideal scene?" So many people surprise me who go into business and they don't have an ideal scene. They don't know what the finish line looks like. They don't know if you and I are going on vacation, you're going to ask me, "So are we going to Universal Studios or Disney?" Because those are two different trips. So
Mhm.
you have to first close your eyes and vision where you want to go before you can paint the painting. You have to do the same thing in business. So I start with the pro forma. If we can make this business make sense on paper with the borrowing inclusive of the expenditures, well, then we've got a good shot of making this thing go right. I've been doing, I don't know, about 40 startups a year for some time now. I do a lot of startups, and that's where we start. We start with the pen and paper, and we really build out a performa, and we have all of our expenses, all of our revenue, and we're not pie in the sky either. We go conservative.
Okay. So like underestimate income, overestimate expenses.
A little bit, like, you don't
Yeah.
really know what your accounting bill is gonna be. You don't really know if you're gonna have a legal bill above or beyond this or that, but a lot of other things you will know. You will know
Yeah.
your lease, you will know this, you will know that. But because I've been doing it long enough, I can tell you, like, every full-time therapist you bring in is gonna be about $18,000 a month to your bottom line. So, we can quickly do the math.
Yeah. Yeah. And so how far in the future are you looking on that pro forma? Are you thinking about what is your exit plan in 5 to 10 years? Like
Oh,
how
no.
far?
1 to 3 years.
Okay.
I just think so much radically changes. I consider the business in phases, right? It's that 1 to 3 year startup phase, and then it's that 3 to 8 to 9 year, management. We call it the growth management phase. And then it's the senior phase, anything 10 years plus. That's when I feel your business is at its peak valuation. I think that's a whole different game you're playing at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, okay, beyond that initial pro forma, like, are you revisiting that then when you're talking expansion or
Oh.
leadership or like kind of taking over the world or the city at least?
Yeah, yeah, because now we're out of our first 18 to 24 months. We're exiting our startup phase and we're moving into our establishment, our management growth phase. Once we're there, we're running on a financial plan. Like we're running on a financial plan. I know to open up office two is about 150,000 between 100 to 150 depending on build out. I also know what that cash flow implication is going to be on a month, what the current office is throwing off, what the new office needs to do. We need to get it break even in 6 months or less. So I know these certain stages and these parameters, so it makes it very comfortable, if you will. It's not such a shocker or a risk to expand. Now, before you expand, you have to scale inside your office. This is where I think people have pause. And you even mentioned this in our podcast together, Julie, where people tend to think like, well, I don't have the money to afford hiring that next full-time therapist. And I always tell them it's not about the money, it's about the production. If you can run yourself up to 85 to 100% of max production for a 3-week period of time or greater, it is time to hire that next
Yeah.
therapist. You may be upside down for just a week or two, but if you follow what I'm coaching, you shouldn't be upside down at all because as soon as that second therapist walks in, you take 35 to 40% of your caseload, dump it on that person. That person's 1 to 2 weeks away from break even. They literally cost you almost nothing. And
Yeah.
now every eval goes to that person, they run their numbers up, and then you're the buffer and you start doing it again. So that's called a hiring complement. We follow that hiring complement. Financially, that should never hold you back from scaling with more therapists.
Yeah. I do find though that often practice owners want to maybe scale to fix, I'm going to use air quotes here, fix a practice that is not working well or not profitable, right? Or
Right.
like if I open another clinic, it will fix everything. And I find that to be untrue. Like if
Bunch.
your clinic is not working,
Yeah. Yeah.
adding another one, like doubling your level of complexity
Yeah.
basically is usually going to make things even worse.
Worse.
What's your experience there?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
100%. You and I are on the same board. You can't expand into something to solve something that's already a problem, right? But I always say move office one into a power condition, then expand into
Yeah.
business two. Move that into a power condition and then expand to the next one. I love, love, love the three office model. I find that practice owners who have a three office model all within 20 to 30-minute drive of each other is a very healthy footprint, has a very high valuation, and it's enough that you're exchanging an abundance with yourself and your team and your community and your patient care experience, but you're also living a life of abundance in terms of your compensation as well. And you haven't tanked your time. You have time to go to horseback riding with your kids and coach soccer and stuff like that. You do have that work-life balance as an owner, and you deserve that as an owner. Too many owners are martyrs, and they're like, "I haven't paid myself in 3 months." And I'm like, "Well, that's a problem. That's not a
Yeah.
badge of honor."
Yeah. Okay, so 3 offices versus, like, something changes fundamentally at 4 or 5 where I'm sure you're making
Yes.
more money, but, like, time-wise, you have a lot less available time. What does that change look like?
So I call the 1 to 3 the healthy family practice operation, and that is really bliss. I've always experienced that with thousands of owners now.
Yeah.
When you get into the office number 4 to 8, 4 to 9, I call that the danger zone. I
Okay.
want you to get through that zone as fast as you humanly can. Because when you're in that 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 range, you can't afford to have 2 loser offices or 2 low producing or 3 low producing. You don't have enough to float that. And you have so much at risk. You have a very difficult time. Now, once you get to 9 or 10 offices, you can go from 10 to 20 in half the time it took you to go from 1 to 10 because you're leveraging such a high abundance of cash flow. You're literally popping out clinics on your cash flow. You're not borrowing anything at this point.
Mhm.
Every single clinic should add another $1 million, basically, if it's about a 22,000 to 2,500 square foot office in valuation to your bottom line. But you have to have that mindset. Like, I want to be, the owner of a practice business. Uh, I don't know. Not everybody that I meet has that DNA, but if they
Mhm.
do, then they're definitely not treating, and they're definitely enjoying building things. They're a builder. So that's my three phases. Three or under, 4 to 8 or nine, 9 plus. It's three totally different mindsets.
Yeah, and you have to be a very different CEO at each one of those
You do.
stages, right? Like, what the business needs from you is a very different thing. So, in that bliss area, like, I wanna go back to that just because you make it sound really nice. What does that look like for most owners? Like, how much money are they taking home? What does their team look like? What is their daily life looking like?
Yeah, so it's compartmentalized, right? And this is where, like, as you and I were talking earlier, your services and what you provide is so critically important because as I am looking for that work life balance with the abundance of exchange coming to my household, I need to get comfortable at giving up things, putting things in the hands of others. I highly recommend that your finance team, your accountant, is advising you and directing you and guiding you on your tax savings, on your ad backs, on your owner discretionary expenses, things that we never went to school for. You need that. You need somebody to help you establish a financial plan. What's your reserve account looking like? What's your payroll account looking like? What's your building fund looking like for the next office or whatever it is it needs to be. But likewise, in 2026, as many people have heard me say about where I have shifted over the last 5 years, is to say there's not enough profit you can squeeze out of the clinical side of the business alone. The physical therapists you have working for you, there's only so many bricks a bricklayer can lay. They're limited by how many direct procedural codes they can use, how many visits they can do, how they can cross people over. You've now got to turn your attention to the administrative side of your business, which is why I spent 2022 and up until today developing what is not an outsourcing company. It's not a staffing company. They're intrinsically flawed. It's a remote admin service provider. I will provide you the remote administrative services and I will manage those services for you at 10% less than what it costs you to do them. As long as I can move into your office and say, I've got your front desk, I've got your verifications, or I've got your billing, or I'm doing your credentialing. If I can do those administrative services so you don't have to put any mental attention on, and I can save you 10% that drops right to your bottom line, now, guess what? You have 2 or 3 locations, but you only have DPTs, PTAs, and techs on your payroll. That's bliss. Those are the people you love hanging out with. You don't have any bad hair days, you don't have people turning over at the front desk, all of those raises, all that stuff goes away.
Yeah. And that administrative turnover, it can really hurt a practice, right? Where the retraining, they just left and they never came back. They left on a Friday, didn't come back on Monday, and you're kind of left
All the
left
time.
holding the bag. But also, I mean, billing is more challenging than ever, don't you find?
I do, and fortunately, there's been an advancement in EMR systems and getting you're gonna spend a little bit more, but you're gonna get more in return, and the more functionality we can get out of our tools, the more peace and the more quality of life we've actually afforded ourselves. So, outsourcing your billing is definitely I don't can't remember the last time I had a startup who said, "Oh, I'm gonna hire a biller and I'm gonna be subject to this person's performance or their attendance or their longevity with me." No one's taking that risk anymore. I mean, we do billing between it depends on the system, it depends on the size scale, but I mean, you could be in the 4%, 5%, 6%. It used to always be 6 to 8%. It's not like that anymore. There are different pricing structures which we aggressively go with depending on the EMR, where we can pass the savings to people because there's more automation in that EMR
Mhm.
now. So look for that. Constantly retool your administrative side, both in staffing. Like I said, I'd love to get all that off your payroll, but also in tools, also in systems.
Yeah. And what you're referring to, Brian, is your company, Meg Business Solutions, right? Am I getting that
Business
name right?
management. Yeah,
Meg
make business
Meg Business
management right.
Management. So for any listeners who are not familiar with that, tell us what you do over there.
Well, from 2006 to today, we stand on the shoulders of we're a training company first and foremost. We do business coaching. I'm not a consultant. I work with you through all the processes, struggles, stresses you have. Like I said, I do a lot of startups, I do a lot of expansions. So I try to help people to understand how they can actually get 16 to 20% net revenue in their operations. I help them to understand the hiring complement. I help them with the pay performance model. I help them with financial plans. I help them with operating strat plans because the goal here is it really does take a village. You need to know what you need to know in advance of needing to know it. So that's Meg Academy. But around the 2000, 2020, 2021, 22, the younger generation was coming to the profession of physical therapy, going and opening up businesses. And they're like, no, 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 I don't want to do my own billing. I don't even want to do my own front desk. I didn't go to school for that. I don't understand patient registration, authorizations, reauthorization. So all of a sudden, the need for services just greatly ramped up. But the services they were looking for is don't give me Becky or Sam or Sally that I have to manage just because they're somewhere else in the world. And but that's still my headache. So we come in, we say, you don't have any of that. We give you an account manager and we give you a team of people. We literally overstaff your practice's needs so that you get consistent service, whether it be front desk, you can have that remote just by phone, you can have that virtually on a video screen. You can pick and choose, or whether you just need a verification authorization officer, or what's really popular is billing. We bill, we post, we collect, we follow up, we do all that for you.
Yeah, and not having to train and cross train and change management that and like oversee something that you know very little
Yeah.
about as a clinician, right? That's huge. That's huge. So, Brian, last week I was on your podcast, The Secrets of the Top 10%. Love the podcast. I mentioned it already. So I want to ask you this question, like what separates the top 10% financially?
Yes, that's a great question. Well, first, there's a few reasons why they're just a cut above. And then, there's about 36, 37, thousand private practices. So the top, 3,600. So what separates them financially? Number one is mindset. Obviously, I think they come into work saying, I'm the CEO of this business. Oh, and I happen to be a PT. So they look at it that way. I'm the CEO and I happen to be a PT. So they have that. The next characteristic that they exhibit is they have a high confront. Meaning they will not wear other people's conditions. And I can't stress this one enough. Everyone's going to come to work for you and they're going to say, I'm a single parent, or I have 150,000 in student loan debt, or I'm making this where I am now. Can you beat that? The top 10% of owners don't play that game. They're like, look, everybody's got something in their life.
Yeah.
Here's the opportunity I have for you. Here's the professional enhancement I can offer you. Here's the exchange and abundance through our pay for performance model or a bonus system or a profit sharing system that I can open the opportunity up for you. So once that becomes a two-way street conversation, the owners have a mutual level of respect with their employees, and they're collaboratively working together to see that the group succeeds first before the individual members can get an exchange of abundance second. So much of that is what separates them, because I meet some of the other owners who don't have that mental quality, and they're like, well, if I don't hire them, someone else down the street's gonna hire them. And I'm like, wait, run that by me again? It's a new grad asking for 105,000 a year, and they've never even carried a schedule for on their own. What are you doing? What are you talking about? That doesn't, like, don't compromise on your integrity and on your ideals. And then secondly, when it comes to money management, it requires discipline. It requires conviction. Having an accounting firm like you and the support financially of somebody who just knows the numbers and knows that will have your back and saying, set up this fund, set up that fund. It's for this purpose, that purpose. Don't touch it. Let it do its thing. You've got to have that degree of discipline. Fortunately for me, I had my wife who was, our CFO, and she held me to I'm like, let's just take the money and go do it. She's like, that's not what that's for. That's not what that heading says. So I think when it comes to what sets people aside financially, is they will manage by statistics. They will run a pro forma in the beginning. They will run a financial plan throughout the course of their business, but they will hold in discipline on how they manage their money. They will hold in discipline. And they also need to know tips and tricks, like you suggested in my earlier podcast. Have a line of credit, always get it when you can. Don't wait till when you need it. They won't help you. Those are just life experience tips.
Yeah. Brian, something I say often on this podcast is I think as a CEO of the practice, your primary responsibility is to ensure the survival of the business,
Yeah.
right? And that's not always a popular opinion, but I think it's true, right? To your point, a new grad that is asking for an amount of money that doesn't make any financial sense, is not steeped in the reality of what they can do or what makes sense for the practice. When you have that conviction, financially what you can afford, what
Yeah.
makes sense, what is reasonable. You can go into that meeting, into that interview, knowing like, I know I made you the best offer possible. And if you don't accept it, that's completely okay because I'm ensuring the survival of the practice. And I'm not making a decision that is great for one person, but then puts the business at risk.
100%. And, being the CEO of your business, for 34 years, you have to be willing to waste. You have to be willing to walk away. You can't be the effect of others. You have to always be in a position of cause. You're driving the car. You hold the steering wheel, the gas, the brake, you have to be. If you ever feel, for those of you listening, if you ever feel like you're walking on eggshells around one of your employees, there's a problem there. You're now
Mhm.
the effect of that particular individual. If you ever feel like, oh gosh, if I don't make this offer go right, I'm going to go without, I can't, I need to do. No, you don't need anything. You need to stay with your integrity and stay to your principles and what's ethically right for the salvation of this business. And to your point, Julie, I've always run and always coached. My CEO is solely responsible for two main products. Number one, the net revenue of this business. You are responsible for making sure that that net revenue is above 15% at all times year over year. Number one. Number two, the quality of services delivered. I take it as as a personal blemish on my own CEO ability if the quality of our services is diminished or if our viability of our services is no longer viable. Those are on me, nobody else.
Yeah. Brian, this has been so helpful. Thank you so much for your time today. If any of our listeners are interested in working with you at Meg Business Management, tell us where they can find you.
Oh, definitely go to our website. We got a brand new website, tons of freebies on that website, www.megbusiness.com. Check that website out. It's 100%. You could also go to grow at megbusiness.com. That's an email. Well, I do free practice evaluation calls all the time. So once you reach out to us and you get on my calendar, we're going to spend an hour just talking about your business. Whatever you choose to do at that point, you're just going to be more educated and make a best decision for you. It's all about helping others, reach the level of, viability and profitability for them, because that's what this game is all about.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Keep doing the great work.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate the offer and being here.
That's it for today's episode of Therapy for Your Money. Catch us on Instagram and Facebook at Therapy for Your Money Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe to Green Oak Accounting on YouTube. Until next time.
The information contained in this podcast represents the host and guest's general opinions and should not be construed as personalized accounting and tax advice. Listeners should consider all facts and circumstances before applying this information and seek appropriate advice from an accountant, financial planner, lawyer, or other professional. Any info provided does not constitute accounting, tax, or legal advice.